When a journalist ambushed Tiffany Trump at a charity gala, no one expected her younger brother Barron to steal the spotlight and shut him down with pure class. The lights of the crystal ballroom at the Belmont Manor shimmered like tiny stars against a backdrop of opulent grandeur. The room buzzed with polite laughter and the clinking of champagne glasses as some of the nation's most prominent figures mingled among tables draped in white and gold. It was an evening dedicated to a noble cause, raising funds for underprivileged children's education. But for some, it was just as much about the spectacle. Tiffany Trump, dressed in an elegant emerald green gown, stood near the corner of the room, chatting softly with a small group of attendees. Her easy smile and measured demeanor had always set her apart from her siblings, projecting a calmness that made her approachable. As the youngest daughter of a controversial figure, she often found herself under scrutiny. But tonight, she seemed at ease, until he arrived. Out of the crowd emerged Neil Parker, a journalist known for his provocative interviews and relentless pursuit of headlines. His presence at the event raised eyebrows. After all, Neil wasn't exactly known for his interest in charitable causes. He moved with the calculated confidence of someone who had rehearsed his steps, weaving through the crowd with his sights locked on Tiffany. "Ms. Trump," he called out, his voice cutting through the hum of conversation. Heads turned as Neil approached her. His smile didn't reach his eyes, and there was a tension in the air that hadn't been there moments before. Tiffany's expression faltered for just a second before she greeted him politely. "Mr. Parker? What a surprise. I didn't realize you'd be covering tonight's event." "Oh, I'm not here for the event," he said, his tone light but laced with an edge. "I was hoping to ask you a few questions about recent family matters." The friendly chatter around them began to fade as curious ears perked up. Neil wasted no time, launching into pointed questions about her father's political legacy and the controversies surrounding the Trump family. His words weren't just questions. They were traps, carefully laid out to elicit a misstep. Tiffany's smile thinned, but she maintained her composure. "I think tonight should be about the children we're here to support," she said, her voice steady but cautious. Neil wasn't deterred. "Surely, Ms. Trump, you can appreciate the public's right to know. After all, your family has had a significant impact on this nation. Don't you think it's fair to address the allegations about—" Tiffany raised a hand subtly, cutting him off with grace. "Mr. Parker, I believe the focus tonight should remain on the cause, not the politics. If you'd like to schedule an interview at a more appropriate time, I'd be happy to consider it." The room grew still. Neil's expression flickered. Annoyance, perhaps. But he pressed on, leaning slightly closer. "So, you're refusing to comment? Isn't that a little evasive?" It was clear Neil wasn't going to back down. And just as Tiffany opened her mouth to respond, a voice cut through the tension like a sharp blade. "Is there a reason you're badgering my sister at a charity event?" But the voice didn't belong to any staffer or casual onlooker. It came from none other than 17-year-old Barron Trump, standing tall and calm at the edge of the crowd. The crowd shifted, heads turning to see where the voice had come from. Standing near the entrance to the ballroom, Barron Trump cut an imposing figure for his age. At just 17, he was already well over 6 feet tall, his confident posture and sharp suit giving him an air of maturity that commanded attention. He walked toward Neil with measured steps, the soft clack of his polished shoes against the marble floor the only sound in the now silent room. Neil blinked, caught off guard. "Barron Trump," he said, feigning a smile. "Didn't realize you'd be attending tonight." Barron didn't acknowledge the greeting. Instead, his eyes settled on Neil with a calm intensity, one eyebrow slightly raised. "I asked you a question," he said evenly. "Why are you badgering my sister at an event meant to help kids? Seems a bit out of place, don't you think?" A few chuckles rippled through the crowd, but Neil quickly recovered. He was used to uncomfortable situations, often thriving in them. "I'm just doing my job," Neil said, shrugging as if the entire thing were harmless. "The public has questions, and Ms. Trump here is in a unique position to answer them." Barron tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "Your job," he repeated as if testing the weight of the words. "Funny. I thought journalists were supposed to report the truth, not twist it to fit whatever narrative gets the most clicks." A murmur spread through the crowd, and Neil's jaw tightened ever so slightly. "With all due respect, Barron," Neil said, his tone taking on a sharper edge, "this isn't really your concern. Your sister is perfectly capable of speaking for herself." Barron's gaze didn't waver. "She shouldn't have to, especially not here. This is a charity gala, not one of your ambush interviews." The tension in the room was palpable now. Tiffany, who had been standing silently, reached out to place a hand on Barron's arm. "It's okay," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. But Barron shook his head, his focus still locked on Neil. "No, it's not okay," he said firmly. "This is what people like him do. They pick a moment when they think you're vulnerable, when you're unprepared, and they pounce. It's not about the truth. It's about control." Neil opened his mouth to respond, but Barron wasn't finished. "Let me ask you something, Neil," he said, his voice calm but unyielding. "If you really care about the truth, why didn't you schedule an interview like a professional? Why come here and disrupt an event that's supposed to be about helping kids? Or is the truth not as important as the spectacle?" The journalist's face flushed slightly, but the faint smile remained as he scrambled to regain his footing. Yet the crowd around them had already begun to shift, murmurs of agreement rippling through the room. The room felt electric, the kind of charged atmosphere that keeps everyone rooted in place, unwilling to miss what might happen next. Neil hesitated, clearly weighing his options. Barron's calm yet unwavering demeanor had put him on the defensive, a position he wasn't accustomed to. Neil attempted a smile, though it didn't quite meet his eyes. "You've got quite the way with words, Barron. But let's be honest, your family thrives on publicity. Surely a few questions aren't out of line." Barron's expression remained steady, but there was an unmistakable edge in his tone when he responded. "Publicity doesn't give you the right to cross boundaries. My family's name isn't an excuse to treat us like targets." A wave of quiet nods rippled through the room. Barron continued, his voice steady but laced with conviction. "You walked in here tonight knowing this event wasn't about us. It's about raising money for kids who deserve a chance at a better future, and instead of using your platform to support that, you made it about stirring controversy. That's not journalism. That's opportunism." The journalist's smile faltered. "I'm simply holding public figures accountable," he said, his voice more defensive now. "Isn't that what the media is supposed to do?" Barron didn't flinch. "Accountability is earned through integrity, not ambush tactics. If you were serious about your role, you'd respect people's time and place. But you came here to provoke, not to report." A hushed silence fell over the room as Barron's words settled in. Tiffany, still standing nearby, looked at her younger brother with a mix of gratitude and awe. It wasn't often that he spoke so publicly, but when he did, it was clear he commanded attention. Neil took a step back, his confidence clearly shaken, but he wasn't ready to concede. "That's a lot of big talk for someone so young," he said, attempting a patronizing tone. "Do you even understand how the media works?" Barron didn't hesitate. "I understand enough to know that when someone like you shows up at a charity event uninvited, it's not about the media. It's about making yourself the story. If you have a question for my sister, ask it the right way. Otherwise, you're just proving my point." The crowd, once silent, began to murmur again, and this time the murmurs carried an unmistakable tone of support. Neil glanced around, clearly realizing he had lost the room. But Barron wasn't done yet, and the way he leaned forward ever so slightly made it clear he was about to deliver the final blow. Neil's face was a picture of frustration masked behind a forced smile, but it was clear he was struggling to keep control of the situation. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, filling the room with an energy that felt like a tide shifting away from him. Yet, Barron remained calm, his steady gaze unwavering. "Since you're so eager for the spotlight," Barron began, his tone firm but controlled, "let's turn this into a teaching moment. You say you're here to hold people accountable. So let's start with you. What accountability do you have to the truth, to respect, to the people in this room who came here to support a cause bigger than themselves?" The air seemed to thicken as Barron's words landed, each one delivered with precision. Neil opened his mouth, ready to fire back, but Barron raised his hand slightly, signaling him to stop. The journalist hesitated, another small victory that didn't go unnoticed by the onlookers. "You see, Neil," Barron continued, "accountability isn't a weapon you wield against others to boost your profile. It's a standard you set for yourself. And tonight, you failed to meet it. Instead of supporting this event, you chose to hijack it for your own gain. That's not accountability. It's selfishness." A soft ripple of applause began at the back of the room and quickly spread. Neil's face reddened, but he still clung to a shred of defiance. "You're making me out to be the villain here," he said, his voice strained. "I'm just doing my job." Barron's head tilted slightly, his expression calm yet unyielding. "A job done poorly is worse than no job at all," he replied, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. "You had a choice tonight. You could have been an ally to these kids, to their dreams, to their futures. Instead, you chose to disrupt and divide. And for what? A headline?" Neil glanced around, realizing the crowd was no longer on his side. The tension had shifted entirely, with murmurs of agreement and approving nods spreading across the room. Barron let the silence hang for a moment before delivering his final statement. "You want accountability? Start by holding yourself accountable. Do better, Neil." The applause was thunderous this time, filling the room with a sense of finality. Neil, clearly outmatched, muttered something under his breath before turning to leave. His retreat met with polite but firm disapproval from the crowd. Tiffany, standing beside her brother, reached out and gave his hand a grateful squeeze. But Barron, ever composed, didn't bask in the victory. Instead, he turned back to Tiffany, his voice soft but resolute. "You okay?" he asked, and she nodded with a small smile, their quiet exchange a reminder of what the night was truly about. As Neil Parker disappeared into the crowd, the energy in the ballroom began to shift back to its original purpose. Conversations resumed, albeit with a new undertone of admiration for Barron's composure and Tiffany's quiet grace. The gala's MC took the stage to announce the next round of fundraising efforts, but the buzz surrounding what had just transpired was impossible to ignore. People approached Barron and Tiffany, offering words of support and encouragement. "You handled that so well," one woman said, her voice filled with sincerity. "It's refreshing to see young people with such strength and conviction." Others echoed similar sentiments, their praise laced with a genuine respect that left both siblings humbled. Tiffany leaned toward Barron and whispered, "You didn't have to do all that, you know." "I know," he replied, his tone soft yet resolute. "But I couldn't just stand by and let him corner you like that. Family takes care of family." The moment felt private despite the crowd around them, a testament to the bond they shared. Barron's unexpected intervention wasn't just an act of defense. It was a declaration of loyalty, a reminder that no matter the scrutiny or pressure their family faced, they would always have each other's backs. Meanwhile, the incident began to spread beyond the confines of the event. Attendees took to social media, sharing their accounts of the confrontation. "Witnessed something incredible tonight," one post read. "Barron Trump stood up for his sister with such poise and maturity, a masterclass in handling conflict." Within hours, clips of the exchange had gone viral. Some videos showed Neil's awkward retreat, while others focused on Barron's sharp remarks. Online debates erupted with hashtags like #FamilyFirst and #MediaEthics trending across platforms. While some criticized Barron's directness, the overwhelming sentiment was one of admiration. People were captivated by his ability to remain calm under pressure, a trait not often associated with someone his age. News outlets quickly picked up the story, framing it as a David and Goliath moment between a young man defending his family and a seasoned journalist overstepping his bounds. Discussions on morning talk shows delved into broader topics: the ethical responsibilities of the media, the impact of public scrutiny on high-profile families, and the importance of standing up for loved ones. But as the world debated and analyzed the incident, Barron and Tiffany stayed focused on what mattered most: the cause they had come to support. Together, they returned their attention to the fundraising efforts, proving that even in the face of adversity, they wouldn't let anything derail their commitment to helping others. As the gala wound down and the attendees began to leave, the atmosphere in the room was markedly different. Conversations had shifted away from the confrontation, focusing instead on the event's purpose. The evening raised an impressive amount for underprivileged children's education, but it was Barron and Tiffany's moment of solidarity that remained the highlight for many. In the car ride home, Tiffany turned to her brother, her expression thoughtful. "You know, Barron, what you did tonight wasn't just about me. It was about showing people that even when the world feels unfair, you can face it with grace and strength." Barron shrugged, his usual modesty shining through. "I just said what needed to be said." Tiffany smiled. "Maybe, but you reminded everyone in that room, and everyone watching online, of something important. Standing up for what's right doesn't have to mean tearing someone else down. It's about staying true to your values." The story of the evening continued to ripple through social media and news outlets for weeks, sparking deeper discussions about boundaries and ethics. It became a reminder that in a world where sensationalism often overshadows substance, moments of integrity and courage still resonate deeply. For Barron and Tiffany, the incident wasn't about gaining attention or proving a point. It was about family, about being there for each other when it mattered most. And for everyone watching, it was a lesson in the power of loyalty, composure, and the quiet strength that comes from standing by your loved ones. And so, as the video comes to a close, I'll leave you with this. The next time you see someone being treated unfairly, ask yourself, will you stand up even when it's easier to stay silent? Because in the end, it's not about making noise, it's about making a difference. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this story, and subscribe for more thought-provoking content. Thank you for watching.